Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the live stream for the Restitutor Orbis channel. We are returning to explore by the Griffin, the symbols of Tartaria, by request. And I'd like to thank everyone for showing up already and also for going to the effort to request this. I'm not usually into doing sequels, but based on the response to By the Griffin, the first exploration, I thought it was warranted. There's also the fact that you all took the action to show that you wanted to do that. So what I wanted to start with, though, is what was significant about the year, or rather the date, 11/23/14? You might have noticed that I very intentionally, or unintentionally, maybe it was subconsciously, put it up on the banner when I put out the information about the fact that we were going to come back to this exploration. Well, this date is significant because this is the date that bureaucrats at the university or whatever other institution I was working with decided to simply follow their paradigm. And as a result of events that occurred 10 years ago, this is why I'm here. So if you appreciate my presence, if you loathe it, either way, you can thank the bureaucrats on this particular day. And I would certainly like to recognize and thank them. So anyway, with that out of the way, griffins everywhere. And where exactly do we see griffins? Where do we see griffins when we're doing these explorations? Do these come up just quite a bit? Do we recall how much they came up before? Oh, thanks, RB. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm not keen on sequels because usually they're not so good, although there are exceptions. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, The Dark Knight, Batman Returns. Well, maybe that one should have been more like the first one, but that's just my opinion. Anyways, okay, I'll stop clowning around. So why do we see griffins everywhere? Clearly, they're a representation of something, and you don't really get an official explanation for them. What we recall from our last exploration is that they tended to be associated with heraldry. They represented certain nations. They represented certain families. No, sorry, Jamie, this exploration is not going to be about you, but you can certainly request it, and maybe we'll get to it. But when you look at the details about the griffin, you'll see that there's certain things that overlap. And I thought what we would do is we would just take a look at some of the griffins in various locations and notice the differences, although there is similarities. For example, comparing this to the previous one, we tend to see more of the details that we would associate with the griffin. Because is the griffin really a hybrid between the lion and the eagle, or is it some other creature entirely? We really just don't know. And maybe that's what makes it so compelling. Yet we see certain details of it that really reflect the commonality across all the lands about the griffin. And so I think that's why it's so compelling. There's also the fact that you just happen to see it in every nook and cranny. And what kind of locations do you see griffins in? Yeah, a lot of people love the griffin. You know, it's certainly something that comes up a lot, and there's multiple spellings to it too. And you know how I like to lampoon multiple spellings, multiple pronunciations, and so forth. Or unless, Jamie, you're talking about how to actually spell your last name, but that's okay too. Anyways. Oh, Vaughn, Chrysler Building. Yeah. And I think what's amazing to me is just how prevalent or how widespread they really are. Now, we can certainly go back to talking about what they meant. I really appreciated this one, though, because here you see what you might think of as a more traditional griffin. You have a little bit of the lion's mane here mixed in with the eagle's head, but you see it's got the lion ears up there. Very intriguing. And what exactly is it doing to this creature here? Is this creature representing some sort of adversary? Or is the griffin represented in a caretaking role here? I mean, who knows? We really don't know. What we do know is we just happen to see this thing everywhere. And of course, since this exploration is on symbolism and also symbology to an extent, and yes, I haven't forgotten about our Willem Dafoe exploration. That'll be coming up here pretty soon. But you see the different symbols in the back here, and we definitely have to ask exactly what these mean, because these can be associated with things that we might affiliate with a positive background, but also a very negative background. And that's something else we're going to be looking at. But I hadn't quite seen something like this where you have a little bit more of the, how shall we say, amalgamation or the real hybrid nature of the griffin being displayed so openly. But I think it is in this image. And, you know, these are all over the place. I've picked these griffins from all over the lands, the major continents. And yes, you can go to Mesopotamia and you'll find no shortage of griffins. They are literally everywhere. There's really no arguing that point. Ptolemy, that other creature is the griffin's little mate. He's looking after him. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a way I see it too. And then Michael says the phoenix, they're definitely affiliated with the phoenixes as well, or the bird that rises, representing rebirth. Ollie, I wonder if each part of the griffin is symbolic in itself. It could well be. And maybe that's why there's variations on what we see with the griffins that are built in statues or carved or however you want to think of them as. And now that I think of it, Gonzo kind of looks like a griffin. He was always my favorite Muppet. The weirdo griffin. Oh, that's an interesting take on it. Yeah, I could see that though, right down to the nose and everything. And Jamie, griffins are guardians of treasure and punishers of evil, greedy men. So very much some old world values that we might affiliate or associate with them. So anyway, moving on to some others. You'll also find, though, that in certain other structures, and again, it doesn't exactly matter where this is, in addition to griffins, we also have certain other symbols that we tend to see a lot of. We always have this cartouche. Sometimes it's got a symbol within it. Sometimes it doesn't. We have this very peculiar clamshell or seashell, and there's different ways to describe this. This is another common one, and you can see it's back here on this dome structure. And of course, you see more of the cartouches back here. But then you also see these very interesting figures. And each of these figures are very unique on this particular structure. And don't ask me where this is. This is location undisclosed. You know, it's a location I've covered before. And if you're curious, do reverse image search on it. We're more concerned with the symbols in this particular exploration. But oddly enough, with these figures, you have what looks to be a little bit of a portal between them. And then, of course, columns. Yes, we're going to take a little bit of a closer look at columns because they appear to be significant and not for the reasons we might think. Oh, and least I forget, what exactly do we have up here? What exactly does that look like? So again, more details all over the place. I am Kairos. Angels. Yeah, you definitely get that impression. Angels are what we might think of as deities. Although it's interesting when you look up the multiple meanings of the word pantheon. It's another one of those words in English that have multiple meanings, kind of like sanction. And you know how much I love to poke fun at that word. So anyways, you see that within this particular structure, though, there are so many different symbols, many of them overlapping, and yet many unique. And oftentimes you'll see this when you're looking in these pediments, these incredible images that they have and these figures, and how exactly did they construct these? Well, it was a crew of artisans that climbed up there and very slowly carved them out. Sure, and that's what the mainstream tells us, and maybe that's true. It just doesn't seem very likely, as I'm fond of saying. But then you see it also in other structures all over the place. And we've certainly seen these kind of unique blocks. And of course, this block arrangement got a little face in here. But then also when you look in different locations, also pay attention to the layout of the columns or the pillars or the columns that are integrated in the walls. And yes, they have their own name, although I'm not one about it. And then you can even see, oh yes, yet more and more griffins than we know what to do with. So as we stated, they're all over the place. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it looks like there's 4 on every corner. 4 times 4 would be 16, although there might be a little bit more to this structure, although it looks like there's 16. So is there anything significant about that? I don't know. There may or may not be. You know, now I'm not particularly fond of numbers. I mean, I'll pay attention to numbers, but I don't obsess over numbers. So sometimes it can be a little bit of a waste of time in my mind. Or maybe, just maybe, it's something significant. Anyways. Moving on. Now, this is an interesting one. This is a structure from, I think this was Denmark. I'm trying to remember who sent this in. I've got this listed to explore this. And like I said, I'm not as concerned with the location right now, just some of the interesting things that we see. Now, is this a dragon? And then we have dragon tails. I do know that this is not where you'd expect to see a dragon, you know, whether we're in China, Japan, or one of those other locations. Of course, you know, medieval legends, there were dragons. But then, unfortunately, this particular structure incurred a fire recently. Ah, yes, another one of those fires. Very inconvenient, unfortunate fires. And once again, it looks like it was a very confined fire. But we'll be exploring this coming up, and you can see, again, some of the symbols that allude to a different civilization, perhaps meaning something else. And then looking a little bit more closely at the base, oh, yes, these do look like some sort of lizards or dragons, or I don't know. I mean, is it Smaug from the animated Hobbit, where Smaug kind of looked like a rat dragon? I've got a lot of love for that film, but I just always found the choice of animations and artistic choices in that film interesting. But this is a very, very interesting structure. And we're going to be taking a look at it in an upcoming exploration. And yes, I have several explorations for Poland, Denmark, covering a little bit more of Eastern Europe, deep diving in there quite a bit. I've been looking forward to getting to Poland. And now that we've got Iberia knocked out initially, we'll be going to Poland. But so you'll see it all over the place. And then, of course, the original sketch of the griffin. And yet, if you look closely at this image, you can see what griffins are doing. Fighting great beasts themselves, or even being targeted, oddly enough, carrying off people. Although, are they carrying off good people, evil people, neutral people? Who knows for sure? Or is this just another one of those sketches that's to give us the impression that it may have been an evil creature? Something that's trying to change our perceptions but wasn't necessarily true. Hard to say. But this tends to be the details that you see with the main griffin in the main image that we associate with the griffin. And as Paulie said, there might be many different things that are associated with it. So, yeah, using a body as a shield. Yeah, I could see that. That is very intriguing, isn't it? Little detail there. Good call out on that detail. So, but moving beyond this, the variances that you see, and many you also seem to get almost a facial expression. I mean, you could almost say that this griffin has a leer on its face. Who would think that a griffin could have an emotional expression on its face? And that's always the old debate, and I think that's the reason why I have so many people who have such issue with me laughing and enjoying myself when I do these live streams, but I do. If I don't enjoy something, I don't do it. It looks like this griffin is enjoying themselves, and I'm not exactly sure why. But another detail that we talk about, and again, we see a little bit of the mix of the variance here with the mane and the ears, but then you have a little bit more of the bird's head. Now, there's always that question. Was this at one point a real creature? Official history tells us no, it was a mythical creature because, people during those times in the Middle Ages or whenever, they were very obsessed with mythical creatures. They had great imaginations, even though they also tell us that most of those people were not literate by choice of the society at that time, and many of them were living to an average age of 30. But whatever, conflicting accounts, and I always like to talk about conflicting accounts. But I think the facial expression on this one is what's really intriguing. Is that saying that these creatures did have a more of a high consciousness to them, that they had the capability of expressing emotions? Or is that just a coincidence? The artist, whoever made this griffin, whenever they made it, decided to put a human trait in it that didn't really exist. Or did this creature exist, and the artist was actually just reflecting what they really saw? What do you think? KC933, it used to be crazy to believe in aliens. Yeah, it used to be crazy to believe in a lot of things, but it just depends on the time. So, Shawnee B looks comfortable and calm. Yeah, that's another way to see it. And clearly, that's not an expression that they like to show us these days, is it? From anyone or anything. Anyways. And then you have these kind of griffins, and here you see a little bit more of the aggressive posture, although I also see a little bit of a noble and regal posture that they tend to be associated with. There's also the curvature here in the wings, and perhaps this is affiliated with the earlier depictions of them, but we really don't know what particular time frame they were associated with or when they really came about, interestingly enough. And then, of course, there's also the griffin right here, and yet at this particular location, we have what appear to be a couple of lion griffins. And I think about that when we looked at the heraldry, how they had changed known griffins on family crests, according to official history, to lions. And so I wonder if that's what happened here. And looking at the other symbols, what exactly do we have? It looks like we have a couple suns. We've got a moon and a star. We've got a castle or an old world building, and then 3 stars. Is there any significance to that? Also notice that these are symmetrical and mirror images of one another. And so I always think about that too when you have the lions that are holding the ball under the paw. Was it originally meant to be a lion, or was it supposed to be something else? And don't forget to pay attention to the top of the columns down here. Now, these are sectional columns, but I've got some very dramatic imagery to show you that there are actually columns that are not sectional. They appear to be one entire milled piece. Because somebody on the comments told me there's no such thing as columns that appear to be one piece. Well, I've got some conflicting imagery of my own to show. Take it or leave it for what it is. And then going back to this other image, now here we see a griffin in more of an aggressive posture. It does look like it's attacking this particular creature. Exactly what this is, I'm not sure. And so this is something that I need to get out on the ground and take a look at. And maybe this is something I'll be cataloging as well, as just the variances in the details of the griffin, but then also what are their actions? Does it have a smug look on its face? Does it look relaxed and calm? Is it in an aggressive posture? Because that's worth noting. Maybe there's significance in it, or maybe there's not. And they just wanted to show what this creature could do. It was actually a living creature. It was a lot like a human being. It had all the dimensions of a human being. It could be good. It could be evil. It could be somewhere in between, just depending on the day. Dominating stance. Yes, Atticus, absolutely. And that's what you see with those lions and the snakes. And you might notice the posture is very similar to that as well. So, They ordered Griffin at the restaurant. Yeah, don't know. Don't think you can get that, but you never know. So, that's Jar Jar Bunk, says KC933. Actually, that does kind of look like Jar Jar, doesn't it? I wonder if that's where old George got the idea. RB, I wonder if griffins knock things off counters like cats. Well, I don't know. If they're as big as people, they're probably doing more than just knocking things off counters. I don't know. Maybe they're like horses and they just go all over the place. And, if you get them mad, they'll knock you down and it'll really hurt. So anyways, oh yeah, this is a little bit more of a unique one. And again, you can almost make out the expression. You can certainly make it out more than on those Roman emperors who don't really even have eyes anymore. So is this the griffin more in the caretaker model? I don't know. It almost gives you that impression. I mean, it's gently cradling this creature almost, giving it comfort. I mean, is that a little griffin? Not really sure. Very interesting, though, that you see these kind of dimensions and you see these variances with these images. I mean, it's very clearly a griffin, although what's it supposed to show? And that's what I found really interesting. And that's something that we didn't really cover in the first exploration, is just the different denominations of the griffin. What's it really doing? What's its disposition? And what does it really represent? Because it's amazing. We have these griffins all over the place, but we also have them doing all sorts of things. Killing things, loving things, taking care of things. Quite a variance, isn't it? Although I guess you could say the same thing about humanity on any given day, couldn't you? Game of Thrones is a documentary. Maybe, maybe not. It's a documentary. Never mind. I'm not going to go there. Not going to go there. So, Stephen, Jar Jar was a double sealed container. Yeah, I'd heard that as well. So, and starting to think it represented a worldwide empire. Maybe Greece, Rome, Egypt were all part of the same empire at one time. Well, no doubt. Why limit it there? I mean, maybe it was everywhere and different parts of it were destroyed in different ways. Some parts survived and some parts didn't. It just depended. It depended what we were looking at. It depended where we were. And then here you have a little bit more of this very interesting, maybe you could say this is a Sphinx-like griffin. Was the Sphinx originally supposed to be a griffin? Who the heck knows? I mean, there's some, such as Graham Hancock, who suggest that the Sphinx may have once been a lion. I mean, who knows? Maybe it was a griffin, or maybe it always was intended to be a Sphinx. I don't know. I wasn't there when they built it. But this is a very interesting variation on it, especially when you see a little bit more of the regal look here. Of course, you could say, well, birds always look regal. Haven't you ever seen a parrot? Yes, I have. And they have that regal countenance to them. And I guess you see that reflected here in this particular griffin. But is it supposed to be a mane or something else, or just a different kind of creature? Exactly. There was a reset, and after reset, whatever was found was used to rewrite history. Well, it wouldn't be hard if nobody had any collective memory, right? It'd be all too easy. Old world Micmac, symbolic for languages and cultures. Oh, very true. And it comes up a lot more than we like to say or we like to realize. RB, Art Deco lion bird. Yeah, I guess you could say that in a way. No doubt about it. Anyways, I think that's... Oh, no, wait. I had one more. Or maybe I have a couple more. But here you're seeing a little bit more of an attack posture with it. And the other thing I find fascinating is that they're either part of the building, they're an extension of the building, or you also have the small griffin figures such as this, which I've always found very interesting. And Is it because they were added later? No, we're never given that impression that the griffins were added later. So what to make of it? Who really knows? So that takes care of looking at griffins initially. And we're actually going to look at another griffin building, the Mitchell building in good old Milwaukee. So give me 1 second and let me get that up. And this has quite a story behind it. And share screen. And here we have the Mitchell building. Now, this goes back to the early days of the channel. I think I did a top 10 video way back in the day when I was still, just finding out exactly how to make videos. And I recall looking at this structure, and I was very taken aback by it because this is from the 1870s, according to official accounts. And the architect behind it was our early channel nemesis, Edward Townsend Mix. Yes, another one of those glorious architects who's responsible for virtually half the buildings in Milwaukee and numerous structures in other places in the Midwest, such as the Mantorville Courthouse in Mantorville, Minnesota, and the capital of Kansas in Topeka. Yes, he architected all his buildings. He was just that good. Another peculiar thing is I used to be able to find an actual picture of this individual, and now it doesn't seem available, because I recall making commentary that I could never find a picture of E. Townsend Mix. There was just this interesting sketch. So anyway, make of that what you will. But about the Mitchell building, there's all kinds of very interesting symbols. And, they tell us 1839 to 1876, but it was actually built in 1876. That's what they say. Centennial of the United States independence officially. But this building has all kinds of symbolism in it. And yes, don't worry, it has griffins on the outside of it, but it's been changed a lot. But you might see that we have our little facial figures. And just to remind you, I am focused on the location here. We are in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. How exactly does one explain an elaborate building like this in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1876? Or was it really 1839? I don't know. That's not what the official history says. So why'd they put 1839 in the building? I don't know. Maybe it was significant to E. Townsend Mix or whoever was actually building it. Or maybe they added it later just to confuse people. Or maybe the official account made a mistake. Not that would ever happen. But you see this very interesting cartouche up here as well. You might recall our looking into the cartouche. Hey, thank you, Earth is Flat. Don't know, and I don't really care. Probably something that doesn't work. Anyways. Heidi, kind of cold in Milwaukee. Yeah, especially this time of year. And it's only going to get colder as the year goes on. But, they banged this building out in the 1870s without any problem. So, Now, oddly enough, though, you see a little difference when you look at some of these columns, because some of the columns as you go to the second floor have more ornate detailing on them. And the reason this building interests me is, in addition to all the cool symbols on it, it's not a particularly large building where you would see or at least understand the mainstream justification for why you would put all these decorative elements into it. I mean, what are you really trying to say here? Is that E. Townsend Mix, if he was real and he did exist, had a thing for decorative elements? And what exactly do we have here? I mean, is this an angel? Is this a Valkyrie? Is this a female warrior in some kind of advanced battle armor with wings? Is it something from Flash Gordon? Where's Brian Blessed in King Voltan? Gordon's alive! Okay, I don't do a very good Brian Blessed, but, I could never ham it up as much as he does. But I mean, what exactly is it really showing? Because there is a lot of ornate detail that went into this. And you can really see it in this kind of image. And there's almost a little bit of a, dare I say, biomechanical integration with this image. Now, you could say it's just your imagination because you saw the sci-fi films. True, I acknowledge that. Maybe it is just my imagination. But I don't know. What do you think? And this is why I like getting feedback, because I want to see how other people see these things. It's important. Pam, siren. Yeah, it does have a bit of a siren continence to it, doesn't it? Isabella, the goddess Hera. Yeah, that could be too. That pantheon that we have there. Inferno has to be 3D printed or something, too detailed. Yeah, I don't think you're going to achieve that with a hammer and chisel. I mean, maybe if you took a lot of time, but who really knows? Lori, don't think it's imagination. Oh, thanks, Lori. Appreciate that. Not that you ever have to agree with me. Please don't ever feel that you do. So, Michael, could Tartaria actually be Babylon? Well, who knows if Babylon really existed? They sure seem to love to push Babylon on us, much like they try to push Rome on us. Now, maybe they did, maybe it is. I can't say that it's not, just making an observation. So, Heidi, I guess they needed those symbols in Milwaukee to keep everyone in line. Yeah, maybe so. They had some sort of significance behind them. Who's to know and who's to say for sure. But then you also have the giant clamshell, or whatever you want to call it, that's nearby. But then also other details. And notice that there's another one here on the right side. And remember, this is not a very large building. Here's another angle on it, and you can kind of see how this one seems to have eroded a bit over time. So again, asking the question, how old is this particular figure? When was this actually done? Well, it was done in the 1870s. That makes perfect sense. So it's not even 200 years old. Look, that rickety thing's falling apart. But it might be much older for all we know. Looks like we've got a Pegasus up here, horse with wings. So, and then again, more of a three-dimensional display on that. I mean, clamshell is not appropriate. Maybe we have to come up with some other name for it. You know, it's just me trying to come up with a descriptive image. Look at this right here, though. Is this a spinal column? Or again, is that my mind playing tricks on me again? I mean, it's amazing what you see with this. And suddenly you do see a little bit more of that biomechanical mentality with it. So yeah, you could see why somebody would think of angel, but is this showing something else? Almost disturbing in a way, how clear that is, wouldn't you say? Laser cannon. Yeah, that's a good one there, Albie. Definitely a laser cannon of some sort. Ooh, David, DNA strands. Yeah, that's possible too, depending on what your perception of DNA may be. Vaughn, Nick Nolte has night vision for that. Yeah, it seems like he does too, doesn't it? But then here's another perspective of it. And so then you can see how far these actually go down. Oh, it's just part of the building. It's a motif. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's not a motif. It's just really hard to say. And again, just trying to reconcile why on earth anybody in the 1870s would be putting this kind of detail or this kind of effort into the Mitchell building is beyond me. Very, very strange. But again, these are the symbols that we're looking at. You know, what does this really represent here on the right? Why is this so paramount? Why is it so important? And yet it's shown in many different places. And what the heck did this have to do with Milwaukee in the United States in the 1870s? I don't know. Not in any of the history I studied or wrote thesis about. And of course, in front of the building, I saved the best for last. They have some of the most well ornate and decorated griffins you can imagine. And it seems like this griffin has a little bit of a chest plate on front of it with a little spike and then a light or some other device hanging off it. So again, it gives you the impression that if you're putting armor or decoration on these creatures, well, then were they really so mythical? Or again, was someone's imagination just running wild in the 1870s? Because remember, that was another time when imagination was running wild. Oh, by the way, don't forget that in the 1870s, that was when the United States was going through the first Great Depression. The first Great Depression, they called the Great Depression until the Great Depression in the 1920s, 1930s was worse than that. But it was bad. But yet they still had the money, the time, and the resources to do something like this. Just like right next door in Iowa, they were building the Iowa State Capitol because they had the money, the time, and the resources to do that as well. Don't worry. We've got lots of symbolism in the Iowa State Capitol too we'll be taking a look at. And I've waited for it for a while. Ah, Jamie. Yeah, it does look cybernetic, doesn't it? See that a little bit more with this one. There are pigeons, carried notes. Yeah, your messengers. Messenger griffins, right? No doubt about it. Anyways, but then in other areas of this building, you still see some of the detail. So I don't know, is this reflecting hedonism? Is it reflecting something else? I mean, really, you could just spend all day. You could do a whole exploration on the Mitchell building in and of itself. And yet then you have other details like this. And keep in mind, this is all on the same building, not a very large building. And so what's this representing? And this is where we see this pantheon. You know, are we to believe that in the United States, they had an affinity, a total obsession with the deities of ancient Greece and Rome for various reasons? Now, someone suggested in the comments that because there's a pagan nature that's reflected in certain buildings, municipal buildings, government buildings. I don't know. I think that's just layered, and it's just something that we're told. You know, I mean, the only pagans you saw were the ones depicted on The Simpsons when Flanders showed up and tried to convert them to Christianity on April Fool's Day, played a joke on them. And you saw that turned out for the Flanders family. But anyway, who knows? I mean, we only know what we're told. I didn't meet anybody who said that they had these particular beliefs. That's not to say that they're not out there, but it's very interesting because it's very conflicting with what the mainstream historical picture tells us about the United States in the 1870s. This is after the Civil War. This is during a time of depression. Yep, we're going to throw this building up and it's no problem. If you say so. Okay, I'll admit, once again, I'm having a little bit too much fun. Sonny, no such thing as pagans. They are just archangels, angels, lower gods. Pagans believed in an all-father. I'm with you. I think it was just a little bit more of our tendency to, how shall we say, assign certain things to people that we don't really know. Or, there's something else you could call it. And the USA was part of a worldwide empire before it was discovered for sure. A lot of evidence of that, unless you're just going to ignore it. But yeah, I certainly agree with you. So this is the Milwaukee Exposition building. I just wanted to show this because they threw this up in the 1800s as well. Quite an elaborate building. Although interesting that there doesn't appear to be any symbols on it. Although if you look a little more closely, we've seen some of these patterns before, haven't we? And there do actually seem to be some symbols beyond first look. Of course, you'll never guess what happened to this building. It's no longer with us. Yes, another unfortunate fire. But still on the note about Milwaukee, they provided this little Pabst display that went to the Columbia Exposition down in old Chicago in the 1890s, the one we all love to talk about. Looking, though, at the Mitchell building from a distance, going back to that, I know I'm jumping around a little bit. Just bear with me. I'm making a point here. You can still see, though, that some of the fine detailing on it is done very well. So while some parts of it appear to be eroded, other parts look like it's been standing up for who knows how long. And it also matches some of that detailing that we saw when we took a look at Riga in the first exploration. And then, of course, you go up here and you see the old portal windows because those were really easy to bang out in the 1870s, I guess, for whatever reason. And I know I keep alluding to that, but it blows my mind how we're just expected to accept that. I mean, do you think you could find a contractor or no matter how much financial resource that you have that you could throw at a project who would do a building like this, even of this size or even smaller? It's not a very big building, but there's all this ornate detail in it. And I think that's what always throws me for a loop about it. Atticus, I would love to learn more about the brain patterning on those columns. Yeah, the brain patterning is very interesting. You don't see abstract pattern as often back then. Yeah, you do in some places, but you're right. You tend not to see it as often. So who's to know or who's to say? I mean, it's giving us different images and different impressions. And there's many griffins around this building. And yes, this is going to be featured in some upcoming explorations because I'm going to get on the ground in Milwaukee again because we know there's a certain actor who's from Wisconsin who's going to be featured in that exploration. But yeah, I can see that biomechanical aspect of these griffins and the fact that they seem to be decorated or armored. Quite interesting. And then this is another look at that Pat's display. And remember, this is the one they took down to the World's Fair in Chicago. Did a lot of renovations on it, but oddly enough, you see this same thing with the figures showing something else. And so again, was this just some mobile architecture that they took down there? So many accounts of mobile architecture too. So yeah, you could throw something like this up and not only could you build it, you could also move it apparently, according to the mainstream account. Yeah, well, it was just made out of plaster. It wouldn't be hard to move. If it's still big, it's big, but is that really what it's made out of? I don't know. Haven't interfaced with this, but it's interesting to me. And then, of course, in other areas in Milwaukee, on other random buildings, you'll see quite interesting symbols that still seem to reflect the same thing. It's like we got the cherubs with the wings. And then, of course, we'll say, this represents a beer stein. It's Wisconsin, silly, and they like to drink there. They sure seem to love to associate that in Wisconsin, don't they? But is that really what it is? Is that really a beer stein? I mean, I could just say it's a fire hydrant, couldn't you? Oh, goodness. Yeah, exactly, Jamie. That's my thought on it as well. I'm not convinced that it is plaster either. I am highly incredulous of that. So, oh, there you go, Casey. Yeah, everything's flammable, especially from that time frame, no matter what kind of structure that you had at that time. Ah, Shawnee. Yeah, those faces are very lifelike. Usually a sign that you've got some bona fide old world architecture. Not a final confirmation, but an indicator. I am Kairos. Can a griffin be a dragon related? I think it very much can be. Who knows? Maybe it's even the same species of creature, or it's some kind of legitimate hybrid creature that alchemical processes were used to make. You might recall in the Lord of the Rings, they always talked about how the dragons were created, or rather, they were life forms that were subverted. Because remember, in Lord of the Rings, evil does not create, it only corrupts. Now, in certain other locations, you can look at grand columns like this, and on the underside of the column, you see that they went to the trouble of putting in some sort of symbol down here. Is this supposed to be a leaf? Is this representing roots? Is this representing something else? I don't know. But I just thought it was interesting to highlight this because imagine all the trouble someone had to go to, however this was made, whether it really was carved, okay, sure, or it was formed through some more advanced process that we don't understand. It was still a lot of trouble to actually form and make this, and then have this be a load-bearing structure. I mean, imagine that. An artistic structure that's also load-bearing. I mean, could you imagine telling that to any architect today, or even trying to get any contractor to try to do that? With any material, I don't care if it's balsa wood. Yep, I want an artistic structure that's load-bearing out of balsa wood to be very beautiful. I'm going to put a lot of weight on it. Oh, there you go, Jamie. Yeah, tongues. That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. See, these are why the comments are so useful. Chassis, I'd be creeped out if all those faces were carved inside the room I was sleeping in. Yeah, I could understand that because they look so real, don't they? It's like, are those faces looking at me? What was that that cruddy movie from the late 90s with Lily Taylor and Liam Neeson? House on Haunted Hill? Or no, The Haunting. That was it. Yes. Again, trying to make us afraid of old world buildings. I still like how Liam Neeson's character was completely nonchalant after the statue tried to drown him. Goodness gracious, that was not a good movie, but just my opinion. Maybe you liked it, and that's all right. And then, of course, as if we don't have enough with all these structures to include the Mitchell Building, here is the Great Plaque. It's on the National Register of Historical Places. Oh, here it's the National Register of Historic Places, not historical places. Let me be sure I'm clear about that. Managed by the Department of the United States Interior. So anyway, interesting there with the Mitchell Building. So I thought we would move on and take a look at some high schools. But I'm going to do something a little different here. I want to show you some footage of an actual high school and let me know what you think. So here we go. So this is Lincoln High School in Des Moines. And you might recall this from one of the previous explorations. And oddly enough, it's got some interesting symbolism on it. Now, why exactly would you be putting this kind of symbolism on a high school in Des Moines, Iowa? How exactly does any of this symbolism make any sense? And who would really go to all the trouble to do this? You've got spheres, you've got odd creatures up there. I'm not going to say they're griffins. They just maybe kind of look like them. I'm not really sure. But it's very interesting. And then when you look closely at some of the entryways, you can see other symbols. But yet there's something about these symbols that seem to reflect and almost seem, dare I say, contemporaneous with the symbols that we just looked at in Milwaukee. Now you could say it's Iowa, so maybe somebody was sharing things, but why put this on a high school? How exactly does that make any sense? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So anyway, let me go to the actual high school images that we have. And we'll just pull up the Lincoln image so you can take a closer look at it. But I just wanted to show you that that's real. I mean, it's still like this to this day. What are these symbols? Crazy old man that's looking at things with a Gargamel nose? Is he, I don't want to say it, but is he scratching his nose or is he picking it? Really, really weird. Very bizarre. And this is what they put on a high school? I mean, is this mocking education? Or why would you go to the trouble to do this? If we don't put the strange guy up there on top of the tower, they're not going to think it's a high school, right? I mean, the kids just need to see that, as if they'd ever notice it. And I'm not castigating kids or anything. I'm just saying I wouldn't notice that when I went to high school. I went in there and I got out. And I went to a high school that looked like a castle. So, Ishko, if someone thinks those are high schools, they're probably really high or maybe really low. Oh, what a wonderful way to say it. Yes. But you see this in a lot of high schools. and you'll see this kind of symbolism on it. Now, was there something are these just books? Is this sphere relating to something else? I don't know, because you get these odd images in these high schools in random locations. Now, there is an older structure that allegedly, and yes, I'm using that word directly, was Lincoln High School in Des Moines, Iowa, but, it burned down a long time ago, as always seems to be the case. So now we jump to East Madison in Wisconsin. And what is this? Is this supposed to be the glaive or something? The weapon from Kroll? I have no idea. I mean, what do you think this is? So we're in East Madison in Wisconsin, and yet oddly enough, we have the same towers up there. So another capital city in the state to the east, but what the heck is this supposed to represent? I mean, I'm completely at a loss. Everybody's always up on numbers, but very interesting symbol and even interesting patterns that we have in this. A spinning mode. Yeah, why not? Go up there and go for a spin, right? Hey, New West Reset. Thanks for joining us. Jamie agrees with me. It's the glaive. Yep. Where's Colwyn when you need him? Call Ken Marshall. He can come dedicate this high school. Oh, if you don't know, he was the actor who portrayed Colwyn. He also showed up in Deep Space Nine, played Michael Eddington. Great character. Oh, Robert. There you are, Portal. And I'm glad you're here, Robert. Your timing couldn't be any more impeccable because we're about to get to your magnificent high school here in a second. So, Ishko, that spinning thing is indeed a little unexpected. Yeah, it's not something that I see on every high school, I've got to admit. Dylan, Black Sun symbolism. Yeah, it could be, or at least what we have affiliated with that. That's very true. Paul, have fun storming the castle. Yeah, where's Billy Crystal? But just really, really interesting when you see these kind of details, and what else is going on down here? Well, this might be something we affiliate with a high school, but I'm not sure. So again, they just had all this time to properly decorate these high schools, put the little adornments here. Hey, if we don't have the little symbol down here, they're not going to know it's a high school. They're not going to study. Why don't we build high schools like this anymore? I don't know. I'm not even going to say anything about the windows. Why do I have to? And I'm still taken back by this incredible, unique symbol up here, the glaive. Just go pull it out of lava and you're ready to go. And then, there's other elements to this high school. And I think this is going to be an on-site exploration. We'll see if they let me in there. I'm definitely going to try to gain access to it. It's on my list when I hit the land of Defoe, but very, very interesting. Not sure what the significance of these symbols are. But I mean, for me, having been in the Middle East, I mean, these almost remind me of minarets. So maybe someone wants to make that connection. That's totally fine. I mean, I'm just saying whatever comes to mind. It's just really odd, though, because you see all the styles in all locations if you look hard enough. So is it really indicating something, or is it indicating one civilization was everywhere? Seems to me it's indicating one civilization was everywhere, but hard to know what to make of it in detail. And I did explore, this is back in Des Moines, Abraham Lincoln High School. I do recall analyzing this material, and I mean, this is very bona fide material. And this was right after I explored the Iowa State Capitol. So, I mean, this isn't any kind of facading. This isn't any kind of cheap concrete. Clearly the real McCoy, whatever it actually is. So, yeah, cantankerous old man up here. An alchemist, maybe? Very, very strange. Not sure what to make of it at all. So anyway, let's take a look at Robert's magnificent school and some of the images that he shared with us. Hey, New West Reset, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. So let's get those images up. And these came from Prime Explorer Robert. And of course, we have a little Griffin on his particular high school. And he shared this with me several months ago, and I wanted to share this with you, because there's some really unique images. Now, of course, we have our classic Griffin there. And here's another angle of it. But then also these very unique columns. Now, these are really unique because these almost seem to be columns that are almost formed from a variety of material. I mean, and I was trying to figure out exactly how old these are. So I really appreciate it, Robert, for sharing these images, because this is not something I've come across a lot. I think I've maybe come across columns like this one or two other times in all my explorations. But very, very interesting. I mean, imagine the effort it would take to form columns like this. I mean, we can see that these are all materials that are brought together like this. How exactly do you do this? Well, simple. You pour them together in a column mold. Okay. They had column molds back then, and they would do all that effort for a high school, right? Of course they would. What are the materials of the base here? And again, the other question is, how old are these things? Hey, Vaughn, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Paulie, never seen anything like it myself. Yeah, this is definitely something new. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to share it, and why, again, I'm very thankful to Robert for sharing it with all of us. So Albie, yeah, very old. That's the impression I have. So, ooh, Jamie, they look like core samples. Yeah, they do, don't they? They definitely look like core samples. Now, this is the real piezo resistance here, because as amazing as that is, and again, this is still on those same high school grounds, what exactly is this creature supposed to represent? Very, very interesting. I mean, again, going back to that hybrid concept of a creature, and this is really where we dive into this exploration. I mean, here it almost seems like we have 3 or 4 creatures. Do we have what looks to be a seahorse? Is there a sea component to it? Is it supposed to be some sort of griffin? What's going on with the tail? But then we've got a horse hoof out here, it looks like. I mean, that's just what I'm seeing. Maybe I'm wrong, and who knows what was broken off. And again, this thing looks like it's about, I don't know, 27 billion years old. Yeah, I'm exaggerating there, but how long has this been there? And I mean, this is just a high school, and this is in the United States, Eastern United States. But I mean, just incredible. This is something you'd see in Europe, and you'd think it would fit in there if it was that old. Oh yeah, things in Europe, they're 1,000 years old. But how long has this really been there? And what are these antennae? I mean, did it originally have horns on it? Just a very, very interesting figure. And how exactly does anybody come up with that? I'm not really sure. Oh, chassis. Maybe it represents earth, air, water, fire. I know you said air, earth, water, fire. For some reason, I'm programmed to always say earth first. Yeah, I mean, it's odd in a variety of ways, Heidi. It's about the only way I could call it. Oh, Goldsmith, sea goat. Yeah. Very, very true. KC, looks like it belongs on the planet Pandora from Avatar. It needs to have a little bit more of that 3D effect to it, though, doesn't it? A little bit more of a special effect to it. I mean, this is actually real. Ooh, Michael, Puff Dragon. That's a good one. So, yeah, this is definitely, several very interesting images. And again, just from a high school, from Robert. So, again, thank you, Robert, for sharing this. And I hope you all enjoyed these images. And I realize I've been having so much fun that we need to take our first break. So before we go on break, just be sure you hit that like button. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We've got some more particular images that we're going to take a look at. And I've got some more footage that you probably haven't seen before. Some of it you may have. And we're going to do some more image analysis on that. And you might find some more surprising things. So I'll leave this particular figure up as we put on the Monty Python music as we go on a 2-minute break. But as you're on break, hit that like button. And again, thank you, everybody, for being here. And we are now going on intermission. Be back in 2 minutes. Okay, everybody, sorry about that. I know we went a little long before our first break, but sometimes I just really get into these things. So we're going to be transitioning to columns and mosaics. And I know that columns and mosaics are something that we see a lot of, but oddly enough, we do tend to get a little bit of the imagery in them that's very, very intriguing. So we'll start by taking a look at columns first. And oftentimes, the issue with columns is that when we see them, we tend to realize that they are common, but are there components of them that seem to be a little bit more common than we realize? Now, does anybody know where this particular location is that we're looking at? And I'll give you all a chance to get back on. So, hmm, hmm, hmm. Ooh, chassis. The god Pan was represented by the sea goat, aka Copernicus. Oh, that's a good one. So, Lori, I just wish we knew more. Yeah, I do too. But that's what we do the explorations for. There's so much to take a look at. So, hmm. No. So this is the Garden of Columns. These are supposedly the former columns that were part of the U.S. National Capitol. Because, we just have so many columns, we could just throw them out in a park. But what I really wanted to focus on with this particular column is what exactly is the symbolism on this? And look at all the detail on this. And again, we see the same things that we saw reflected in some of the images. So you think a column may be plain, but there's always a little bit more detail on it. Now, this particular column is also a water tower. This is the Grand Avenue Water Tower in St. Louis. We explored this when we did the St. Louis exploration, Rome of the West. And yet we see the same symbols here. The same leaf symbols. Oh, yeah, well, it represents ancient Rome. Okay, so why were they representing ancient Rome in St. Louis in the 1800s? Well, I don't know. It's just a cool thing to do. This tower is still standing to this day, and I believe this is still the tallest freestanding column in the entire land, or world, or whatever you want to call it, interestingly enough. So, and maybe those leaves are really waves. Yeah, that could be. That's a good interpretation. Oh, yeah. And you should know that this is within spitting distance of another one of what they call a standpipe water tower. I mean, yeah, to me, it was always comical that they considered these water towers. Sure, it's a water tower, whatever you say. Just like that. Oh, here's the image of it. So here you have the Grand Avenue water tower. And then here's the, I think it was the Bissell Street water tower. I looked at both of these. And no, unfortunately, the neighborhood around these incredible beauties is not exactly doing well. Although you will find some old world structures in and of it, including this amazing old church that's right next to it. But yeah, just imagine that. Imagine that somebody would build a column this tall. Now, of course, you could say this is a component column. See, I can see the bricks. Yes, true. But how exactly was all this detailing up here done? And why was this done for a water tower? We just had nothing better to do in the 1800s, I guess. And yet in other locations, you'll see the same symbolism, or at least modifications of it. There's always the spheres that seem to pop up a little bit more as we go. And here with our Pantheon, our laurel wreaths again. And yet, oddly enough, other images. This looks like a really sad affair. But more to follow on that. And then back to Milwaukee, they have what they call the Carnival Column. Oh, yes, the Carnival Column. They say they built this in 1900. So this is the column that has the very interesting sphere on it. But again, the same decoration on the top of the column. Now, is that somehow significant? Or, am I just seeing the same thing? Because for some reason in the United States, we just like to throw up columns all over the place. Columns are cool. Columns represent American democracy. Of course, they also tell us they didn't say democracy in the 1800s so much. They called it a republic then. So I don't know, make of it what you will. So... Polly, I'm not seeing the carnival behind it. Oh, don't worry, Polly. It's coming up. They got a real doozy of a story with that one when we get to that exploration. So, and no, I did not cover it on the initial exploration of that city yet. There was a very definitive reason. So, Yates, Corinthian style. Maybe. But I find it interesting that someone's doing Corinthian style across the United States during that time frame. Not to say it's impossible. Not ruling it out. Just interesting. And I'll leave it at that. Now, of course, you also have these other images. Now, this is the third water tower in St. Louis. This isn't co-located with the other two. This is in a, how shall we say, what they might consider a more upscale neighborhood. And a very interesting image here from the early 1900s. And what exactly are these reliefs up here representing? It looks like we got Lady Godiva, we got George slaying the dragon, and then looks like we got a Pegasus horse. Oh, and don't fail to notice what's on the side here. Huh. Yes, very, very odd. And again, another one of these standpipe water towers in the distance. I mean, does this architecture, do these symbols, does anything about them remind you of Midwest United States? Is this St. Louis in the early 1900s? Oh, of course, people say it's well documented, and they had several manufacturing plants that just churned out all these blocks, in addition to all the bricks, too, because remember, they say bricks are affiliated with that. Yeah, sure, why not? And I guess this figure here makes complete sense with the social mores that were in place at that time, don't they? Yeah. Again, not really making a lot of sense, does it? Just don't know what to say about it. St. Louis was crazy in the old days. Yeah, maybe that's the explanation there, Sean. They were just going all over the place, so. So we had to destroy it. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. And then here's the National Capitol columns. So all of these preserved and just sitting out there in a park because, what are you going to do with columns? Well, you turn them into a park and you can go column gazing, I guess. Now, there's a couple sites that reflect the same kind of remnant that you'll see. But is this really the national columns or was this some other structure that was there? I don't know. And oddly enough, when you look at these columns, they do appear to be one entire piece. But don't worry, I got even better evidence than this not exactly great image that'll show you that there are columns that aren't just outdoors that appear to be one piece. But there's also this sort of motif that we see in some of these columns. Now, in certain locations, they'll try to show them more as corn or a bountiful harvest, but this one looks a little bit more genuine old world. Now, again, I could be wrong. I'm not looking at it right now, but another interesting detail showing us the harvest and the ability to sustain people. Yeah, there's that subtle beauty that comes into it. So what's it really reflecting? No, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm with you, Heidi. I think it was a building too. I just don't believe that someone was hauling gigantic columns as single pieces out there. But, I could be wrong. But I'm with your impression on it. Anyway, that's it for the columns. Now let's go to mosaics. Now we've come across several mosaics before. And I'll start by showing you a building. And again, jumping back to St. Louis here. The good old Cathedral Basilica of St. Louis. Yes, this incredible beauty that they built in the early 1900s, around 1916, if that's to be believed. But on the inside of it, they have this incredible mosaic. Now, we're informed this mosaic was completed in the 1980s. Although, oddly enough, for something that was done so recently, it's very difficult to actually find definitive evidence that they did. I'm not saying that they didn't do it, but it's just interesting when you see some of these things from these mosaics. And you also think about all the detailing that goes into these mosaics. And oftentimes, you won't see things in the mosaic in terms of the detailing that fits the image or at least the perception of the times that we think that we have with that. Brian, right now, this beautiful building has a bunch of scaffolding around it. Yes, another little recurring theme there, Brian, with the old world buildings. To include my favorite state capitol, there's a lot of scaffolding around it all the time, too. Cathedral, Cathedral. Very true, very true. So that's all interesting with that. But then also up in the dome, and you might recall some of these images, I mean, very striking colors. And this is all an entire mosaic. And you can go back and look at that exploration. I was able to get into the Cathedral Basilica of St. Louis very briefly and actually look at this. And it was quite awe-inspiring, as it usually tends to be. Then you also see other oddities, such as this. Now, this could give you the impression that this is maybe something a little bit more modern, possible. But if you look at some of this detailing here, you have other odd symbols that don't seem to make a lot of sense. And then, of course, you also have a slew of old world buildings. So I'm not really sure. Maybe new, maybe old, maybe a mix, because they definitely love to confuse us. That much has become clear. So could some of these images be genuine old world mosaics, and then they mix something new to try to confuse the impression? I'm not wondering. And that seems to be something that's going on a little bit more habitually these days, isn't it? All right. Before we go on to this one right here, I have another little video to show you. And let me see here. Equitable building. Oh, here we go. Mosaic. So enjoy this one. We are in the Iowa State Capitol, and we're looking at this very odd mosaic. So keep in mind that this is formed the same way. Iowa State Capitol built 1871 to 1886, according to official accounts. And yet, what exactly do these figures actually represent here? How exactly are these figures representing anything of Iowa from Iowa in the 1870s or even in the early 1900s, whenever you want to believe this mosaic was done, because there's a couple different accounts on when it was actually done. But very, very odd images in this, and even odd images when you look at the background on this mosaic. And this entire image is all a mosaic. You can see it in the video. All these little squares that all had to be pieced together like this. Now you can tell there's a lot more elaborate detailing on this one than even the one in the Cathedral Basilica of St. Louis. I could be wrong, but it appears to be that way. And so it's really hard to say what exactly is going on with it. Now, Heidi, Iowa planting corn. Yeah, that's what one would expect. That's what one would expect to see. But you look at this particular image. I mean, what have we got here? Book, fasces, not really sure. Scales of justice. But here you can actually see the mosaic. And just think about the time and effort it must have taken to put this together. And so this is another one of those little things, and why I always have such an affinity for the Iowa State Capitol, because you can find all kinds of different examples of the old world in the Iowa State Capitol alone. A mosaic, figures that don't make any sense, a nice big column, the Soldiers and Sailors Monument out by it. I mean, it's an all-stop shop. And then the best part is you're actually welcome to go in there and explore it, unlike some other old world buildings. And so compare and contrast that with what you have here with the mosaic in St. Louis. Now, are there differences? Are there parts of this that seem old world and other parts that don't? I don't know. I'm not trying to lean you one way or the other. I'm just pointing out possibilities. And so I think that's why mosaics are always very intriguing to me. Ah, KC933. There's the award-winning comment right there. It's like the Denver airport. Ah, yes. Might have to see if I can pull off that exploration someday. So, you know, it's sovereign, invisible, untraceable. It is the all-stop shop. That's why it's building number one. And like I said, if I could get to Florence Cathedral, it would be. But, you know, it's just not so easy to get to Florence Cathedral. Not all the time, anyway. So, anyways, let's see. Did I have anything else from columns and mosaics? No, I did not. So now we'll go to the Pantheon. Now, Pantheon is another one of those strange, funky words in English. And again, I have another little video here to show you. And we're going to be looking at the Pantheon that's displayed in the Iowa State Capitol. And so here you go. Enjoy. Oh, yes, and we start out by looking at these columns that are very clearly single columns. These are not component columns. So here's my more striking video evidence to show you, if you haven't already seen it. Yes, these columns are clearly one piece, and they were on the inside. And then above each of these columns, all around the rotunda of the Iowa State Capitol, we have this Pantheon. Are these the learned leaders, the multiple definition of Pantheon, or is this some sort of assembly of all the great deities? I mean, who's to know, who's to say, because you kind of see some interesting things within both of them. And so you'll see a lot of examples of those pantheons. So let's see what I have for some images on these pantheons and deities. And it's really odd what you come across when you come to the Iowa State Capitol, whether you're looking on the inside or the outside, because, you know, it's literally gold. And yes, they tell us that this symbol, again, here's this symbol again. This is the Iowa State Capitol. This is literally made out of gold. This is not painted out of gold, just like the dome isn't painted out of gold. It is literal gold because, in their words, it's cheaper. Okay, yeah, if they say so. Now, do I think this is gold or could this be something more? Not really sure. Very, very interesting material, though, and a little close-up image of it. But who do these figures really represent? And why are they in a state capitol? And it's not the only state capitol in Iowa where you'll see something like this. And I picked this image because the mosaic back here, that's where the mosaic actually is, just so you can see it. So yeah, just so many different goodies within this particular structure. Yeah, I'm kind of get like a kid in a candy store whenever I go there because you just get that real feeling that you're in a bona fide old world building. Now, this is not the Iowa State Capitol, location undisclosed. And if I told you where this was, I'd probably be in all kinds of trouble because I've gotten in trouble for telling you where this is. And anybody who's from Iowa probably knows exactly where this is. But very interesting little chapel or memorial here that includes everything. So you've got the very decorative columns here. You've got columns in the windows. And then by the windows, of course, you've got the colored windows too. So kind of everything here. And then, of course, the symbolism within the floor. And all this is very hard and bona fide material. And if you do actually know where this is, I strongly suggest you visit it because it's another one of those things that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So, Jamie. Yeah, gods of Olympus. I don't know. Maybe so. Hard to say for sure. Now, here's another image, and here you're looking at the actual dome of the Iowa State Capitol. So, yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, is this just some image that they're showing us? Is this all real gold? Or did they take the real gold off it? I don't know. What I do know for sure, though, is they're constantly renovating this. And what exactly does this device represent here? Not really sure. Is this my queen's piece if I'm playing chess? I'm not certain at all with this. But just those little details that I thought it was interesting to point out. And then looking at the Pantheon again. And then there's other little figures in another ring above this little Pantheon. And again, more paintings here that, of course, do not reflect anything that we're told of the official historical life of Des Moines, Iowa, or anywhere in Iowa for that fact, from 1800 until today. You know, unless you're going to believe that there were all these people running around in robes who were building all these single piece columns and then putting them up on the inside of this elaborate palace of a building. Sure. Yeah, you know, you can believe that if you want to. Jamie, an urn. Yes, we always come across those urns. Yeah, and maybe some sort of lamp or something. So again, not really sure what to make of it. That's it for those images. And let's see. So other things to look at from the Pantheon. Got a few more videos for you to show you. Now, oddly enough, right down the road from the Polk County, or from the Iowa State Capitol, this is the Polk County Courthouse in Des Moines. And you got these little figures above the windows. Now, unlike the state capitol, you are not welcome to take images from within this building. I'm not exactly sure why. So I can only describe to you what's in it. They've got some very curious looking banisters with some very curious looking goat's heads on the end of each banister. But I could not take any footage from there. Surprise, surprise. And here is the Equitable Building, again in Des Moines. And oddly enough, some strange figures here. We have what appear to be gnomes that are holding the building up with urns or some sort of chalice. Yeah, that was really easy to put on there. This is another one of those buildings that's from the early 1900s because apparently they just had infinite time and funds in Des Moines. And what exactly do these symbols represent? And I mean, look at this giant doorway. This is all still here, so you can still walk this and explore this. It's all within walking distance of the Iowa State Capitol. So for those of you who wonder why I like to go there, because there's a lot of old world architecture that's all within walking distance. So yes. And then some other random things in Des Moines, such as this particular little basilica. And oddly enough, this is a Catholic basilica. But what exactly do these symbols have to do with Catholicism? I mean, maybe Virgin Mary there, but you'll see other things that just seem to completely detach, such as that nice obelisk there. Oh, yeah, that's what we see, you know. Catholics like their obelisks. Don't forget there's one in the Vatican, the one they brought from Egypt, I guess. So what the heck does that have to do with the Catholic Church? I don't know. Got our bird with, it looks like an umbrella above it. Yeah, all very, very interesting little details, and it just doesn't add up. Oh, yes. Griffins and phoenixes up the wazoo. I mean, whatever you want to say. So many of them, you just don't even know what to do. But that's why when you go into this Iowa State Capitol and you see all these figures that are all in gold, Doesn't really add up. You see all the top of the single piece columns that are decorated in gold. Ooh, we didn't paint it gold because that was too expensive. Let's see. Did I have any other imagery? Oh, I saved the best for last. So again, with the Iowa State Capitol, there is also this very, very interesting little series of images that comes up, and it shows you something. And this is on that incredible banister there, all made of ivory, I guess, or marble. But when you look really closely in the details here, in this little cornucopia, you see the same sorts of leaves. You see snakes, you see griffins, you see birds that are all fighting. Very, very odd. And again, all in the Iowa State Capitol. Of course, we got our little plaque here. And oddly enough, they throw the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi up there and then have underneath it in memory of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And then on the left there, you can see right what is very clearly a snake in that assortment of marble, ivory, or whatever more advanced material it is. So, New West Reset. Were you told why you couldn't film photo in there? If it's a state capitol building, it's public property, and therefore you should be allowed to. So let me spell this out, New West Reset. So the Iowa State Capitol, the building we're looking at right now, you are welcome to go in there. You are welcome to film. But in the Polk County Courthouse, which is in the same city and maybe about a mile away from the Iowa State Capitol, you cannot go in there and you cannot film. The stated reason is it's for security reasons. That's what they told me. So yeah, it's okay to go into a state capitol. It's not okay to go into a county courthouse. Don't ask me why. Maybe it's because some of the symbols in that county courthouse are pernicious and they don't want people to see them. But that's a supposition. Maybe it really is security reasons. I don't know. I will also share this with you though. The energy in the Iowa State Capitol, what you feel on the inside. Now you could say, okay, Aurelian, you're getting a little flowery on us, or you're getting a little metaphysical, and that's okay. You're welcome to think that. But there's a positive energy in the Iowa State Capitol. You feel renewed when you go there. When you go to the Polk County Courthouse and you go in it, you do not feel that. You feel that there is something that's missing from that particular structure. So, yes, the courthouse is public property, New West Reset. You're absolutely right. So not really sure what to make of it. Yeah, and I mean, it's really, really odd to me. And most of the locations you go to, you're pretty welcome to film it. I mean, the Polk County Courthouse is a very beautiful building, but it's really, really odd how it contrasts with the Iowa State Capitol. And there's a disparity with the symbols in terms of what they really show. And I think Jamie might be onto something right here. So who's to know or who's to say that different events didn't occur at these buildings? And there's a reason why you have different energy fields in either one. Hey, Dwayne, good to see you. Seems like everything nefarious is covered by the security reasons mantra. Yes, beyond any shadow of a doubt. It's a matter of internal security. The age-old cry of the oppressor. That was classic Picard. New Picard would never say that. New Picard would say, "Oh, yes, I understand. We need to have more security. It's better for everybody." Okay, enough of that. So everything is electric. Yeah, I definitely agree on that one, Vaughn. So the quest. Did you know America has more pyramids than Egypt? Yes, actually it does. A lot of people always forget about all those bona fide, genuine pyramids that you have in what's today Mexico and then further south. But if you go to northern latitudes, they're not pyramids. We call them mounds. But remember, they're not pyramids. They're mounds. Let me be clear on that. They just kind of look like pyramids. So make of it what you will. Oh, Paul, we got to beef up security around the Whopper. Yeah, I'm not wondering if somebody is saying that for sure. But, well, and it's funny, Book of Aquarius, you say that. Who knows exactly what China has? China's really one of the big mysteries out there. Do they have more? Do they have less? I honestly don't know. There are signs they may, and there are signs they may have a lot of other things. And maybe they don't. Very, very odd. Atom bomb, security of their corruption. Yeah, that's probably a very direct way to suggest what's going on. So, but I mean, is it just pyramids? Is there something with the domes? Is there something with the columns, the arches? Do they have a function beyond what we see? Is that really what the symbolism is? Is the symbolism just artistic, or is there a real function behind the energy portion to it? So, yeah, too big to hide. I mean, that's a good way to put it there, Punchy McTain. Great name again, I might say. So, but anyways, I think that is all that we have for By the Griffin Part 2, Symbols of Tartaria. But before I depart, I wanted to ask you, there was quite the response to the unknown lands, and I didn't really even ask for any response. It just seemed to come up from nowhere. Now, like I said, I don't really like doing sequels, but I'll tell you what, if the unknown lands has 2,000 likes by a certain day this week, I won't tell you when, then we'll do a sequel to the unknown lands. And if you want to see a By the Griffin Part 3, this is going to need to have some serious likes. I mean, another sequel, what would we call it? The Search for the Griffin? Hey, thank you, New West Reset. I appreciate that. And thanks for joining us. But anyway, I'll tell you what. If you want to see more sequels, then just hit the like button. Either hit the like button on this one, or if you want to see To the Unknown Lands too, go to that one and hit the like button. And if either one of those is up by 2,000 by the day to be determined this coming week, then we'll do another sequel. And if not, no worries. I've got a huge list of live streams that we'll move on to. So either way, I do appreciate coming back to this. And there's always more that we could see in either one of these topics, whether it's the Symbols of Tartaria to the Unknown Lands too. And we've got probably about, let me see here. Right now, I've got a list of 192 live stream topics. So no worries there. So if you don't vote or you don't want to see any more sequels, that's totally okay with me. I love doing everything. So anyway, appreciate everybody being here. It was a great time. And thank you, Ishko. And yeah, please hit the like button before you go. But if you really want to see something, then you know what to hit the like to. It's not going to hurt my feelings. So when's the next live stream, Josh? Next live stream is Saturday. Next week, Saturday, same time. So live streams are always Saturday at the same time. So in any event, I hope you joined this, or I hope you enjoyed this. And thank you for joining me. And thank you for all the comments. I appreciate it. And I'll definitely go back and read some more into the details. So you all have a great week. And with that, this is Lucius Aurelian signing off.